looking at the Gators a little bit more closely, what has cost them this year is that their offense has just been dreadful, really outside of one game. They're only scoring about 22 points a game, averaging less than 350 yards per game. This has just not been a good offense. And it kind of starts that at quarterback, they have not gotten the play they were expecting out of DJ Lagway. It turns out the injury he suffered to start the season, back in the spring, really did hamper his development. And it's not been a good year for him. Completion percentage is fine. And actually, it's pretty good at 67% completions. But 6.6 yards per attempt, just over 200 yards a game, 9 touchdowns to 7 picks. Yes, 5 of those interceptions came in one game, so that raises things up a little bit more. But he still has not done a good job of taking care of the football, and he's not able to just successfully push the ball downfield the way they would like him to, outside of a couple moments here or there, and the Texas game, and then I think early on against Florida. He's also not running the football well. Like, that injury has hampered him. Like, on the season, he has 4 rushing yards. Like, that's a guy who, like, the run game is supposed to be a big part of what he does and is a threat for teams, and he doesn't have that. And that was something Napier talked about in his press conference today. The thing that is hurting their offense is there's situations where they want to be able to have Lagway's legs be a factor, and he can't use them because he just can't run all that well. And I think if you're Mississippi State, this is a game where a season ago, Lagway hurt you with his legs a few times. This was also a game last year that State made Graham Mertz look like a Heisman winner. But DJ Lagway came into the game some, though, and was able to beat State with his legs. You have to hope that you can keep him contained a little bit better in this game because the run threat's not been there, which also the run threat's not been consistent for this team overall in the season as a whole. Jaden Ball is someone that there's a ton of excitement and hype around. Is like, that dude is a big-time player. 6 foot, 230, can bowl you over. He's having an okay season, averaging about 77 yards per game, but he's under 5 yards per attempt. He only has 3 touchdowns scored on the year. And if you look at his game logs on the season, he was fine against South Florida, but it didn't make much of a difference. Shut down against LSU, shut down against Miami, shut down against Texas A&M. Had a good game against Texas, although a low yards per carry, but still a pretty good game running the football against the Longhorns. He's not been super effective because their offensive line hasn't been as strong up front as they were hoping it to be. They haven't given up a ton of sacks. They're not been great in protection, but they're also just not blowing teams over in the run game the way that they needed to. And I think this is a team that needs the run game to be effective. Now, I will say the last couple of weeks, there has been some emergence in the receiving room. And that's because Dallas Wilson, their 5-star true freshman, has stepped in and has been really impressive. In 2 games, he's caught 9 passes for 131 yards and already has 3 touchdowns to lead the team. Like, he has been really impressive for them. Vernell Brown III is another true freshman right now leading the team in receiving with 27 catches and 368 yards. J. Michael Sturdivant, another receiver who's been a bit of a factor for them. Still have Eugene Wilson, although he's not been the type of player they're hoping to come in the year. Hayden Hansen at tight end has been a solid player for them. They've got some pretty good weapons to throw to, but again, Lagway's just not been overly effective at getting those guys the football, and they've not been the explosive downfield pass game that I think they were hoping. And again, a lot of that stems off of, I think they're expecting we're going to get the run game going instead of the play action down the field. They've not been super effective running the football. They are, I think, the worst team in the SEC when it comes to third down conversions. They've also committed a lot of turnovers. Again, a lot of those turnovers happened in one game, but they still have not been good about protecting the football in some of their other. I think it's back-to-back games with 2 turnovers against Texas and Texas A&M. So it's not like they were protecting the ball in those games either. This is a Florida offense that's got a lot of problems. They looked really good against Texas at home. Now, and Texas is a good defense. We just saw what Texas did to Oklahoma. That defense is legit. But it's looking more and more like that one performance was very much an outlier, and that this is a Florida deep offense the Mississippi State's defense could have some success against.
Yeah, I mean, you got to feel motivated and hyped up if you're Mississippi State's defense. I still don't know what happened in that Texas game for Florida, but other than they just had a really good day. And other than that, that's all they got. I mean, I have not been impressed with it. Florida fans haven't been impressed with it. And this is a game for Mississippi State that you don't want to lose, but you also don't want to come into it and just barely get by with it. You want to show that you belong, but also you want to expose Florida for the terrible team that they are. I think that's what Jeff Levy is. I don't know if I want to say he's preaching at the team, but I feel like that's kind of got to be part of the mindset this week, don't you think?
Yeah, I think you have to recognize this is a very important game. I don't know if their mindset is exposed Florida as it is just we got to come in and play our best. And Levy feels encouraged by the week of practice that they had last week and getting the break, and also the way that they came out from an energy standpoint today. But again, there's an opportunity here, and I think State's defense has shown that against vulnerable offenses, they can make plays. And look, the Texas A&M game, I understand the Aggies put up a bunch of yards and things started to snowball at the end. They had 7 points on the board until late in the third quarter. And State's offense really had shut them down. Like the first half, you give up one big pass play that results in a touchdown. You start off the second half forcing back-to-back punts. Like Mississippi State's defense has found ways to step up and get stops, and that is a much more dangerous offense on the road at Texas A&M than you're facing with Florida. Now, if Florida's offensive line is able to step up and have a big day, because that was the key against Texas, is their offensive line looked like the group that was expected to be coming to the year. There were high expectations for Florida's O-line to enter the season. They've only shown that in one game. They showed that against Texas. Against Texas A&M, they were not that again. Pass protection wasn't good. They gave up 3 sacks in that game. They also couldn't block well up front in the run game. They're one of the worst teams in the SEC at allowing tackles for loss. So, again, it's not just pass protection. It is also being able to block in the run game has just not been a strength for this O-line. If your State's defensive front, I think you've got to have a big day here. You've got to limit what they can do in the run game, keep Jaden Ball from being able to consistently move the chains. And I think you have to find ways to get after DJ Lagway because he's a guy that has made mistakes this year. And I think if you just let him be comfortable in the pocket, Florida's got some receivers who can make some plays. But I think playing aggressive defensively and trying to get trying to get Florida behind the chains, that has got to be your approach if you're State's defense. Because if you get Florida into third down situations, they've not been able to convert. I oddly think there's a lot of similarities to what you saw from a game plan standpoint against Texas A&M, and I think it carries over here. And if you were able to have some success at A&M against that team that's much better, you have to feel confident about your chances of doing the same at Florida. On the other side of the ball, Florida does have a pretty good defense. This is a team that on the year, they're giving up less than 20 points a game from a yardage standpoint, only 316 yards a game allowed. And really, they've only had one game allowing over 400 yards of offense. That was against Texas A&M. But, all the other games, they've done a pretty good job of limiting their opponents. And it's not that they do anything super sexy. Like, they're not a dominant run defense. They're a pretty good pass defense, but not dominant on that end either. But they just do a good job of going out and getting stops. They don't get a ton of sacks, right? Only 9 sacks total on the season. This is not a team that has generated a ton of pass rush. And I think 5 of those sacks came against Texas. In fact, 6 of those sacks came against Texas. Now, the concern there is Texas's offensive line is bad. And when Florida faced a bad offensive line, they were able to tee off and take advantage. Against better offensive lines, they were not as good. But then again, LSU's offensive line also sucks, and they didn't get a sack in that game.
Right.
From a tackles for loss standpoint, they averaged 4 a game. That's not all that impressive. George Gums and Tyreek Sapp off the edge are both pretty good players, but they're missing Caleb Banks a lot. They're big-time defensive tackle. They haven't had him since the LSU game. He's been a big loss for them, and it's really hurt their ability to really slow teams down. They've got some guys that can make plays, but they're solid third down defense, although they're not incredible. I think they've forced some turnovers, but again, they're committing more turnovers as a team. It's a solid all-around defense, but there's 2 things I would point out. From a run defense standpoint, they've been very up and down. Ignoring the game against an FCS team. LSU and Texas, those games, their run defense was awesome. And those are 2 teams that are bad on the offensive line, like I talked about. They were able to shut down those teams from running the football. South Florida ran the football pretty effectively. And keep in mind, the offense South Florida runs is the same offense as Mississippi State. Now, there is a key difference that South Florida and Byron Brown has a quarterback that is a big threat with his legs, and he was the leading rusher on that day. I don't know if that means you suddenly plug in Kamario Taylor and lean on him. But South Florida's running backs actually had some effective runs in that game as well. Miami, though, does not have a quarterback who can run. Miami's got an offensive line that's built to mash teams in the run game. They mashed in the run game for 184 yards. Texas A&M has an offensive line built to mash teams in the run game. They mashed for 183 yards. Obviously, Marcel Reed is a threat with his legs, a little bit different. But I watched a lot of that. It was a lot of Texas A&M lining up and running inside zone over and over again. They weren't doing anything sexy in the run game. They were just lining up and running the most basic play there is in football. For Mississippi State's flaws, and again, this is where you do want Albert Reese to be back, and their flaws up front, they have been pretty good in the run game. They've actually been pretty good in run blocking. We actually saw today Mississippi State has the highest rushing success rate in the country, which means when they run the football, they are the best in the country at that being a successful play according to the success rate metric. I know it doesn't sound like you're going to have Fluff Bothwell, but I think State's got a chance to be able to run the football pretty effectively in this game. The other thing to look at with Florida from a defensive standpoint, they've given up some big plays in the pass game. Like Texas and Texas A&M, like Texas got back into it with big plays through the air, but Texas A&M was able to hit some big shots down field. South Florida as well. Like the South Florida was able to win that game because they were able to hit some explosive plays downfield in the pass game. Mississippi State has not been a very consistent passing team, but Mississippi State has had the ability to hit explosives. I think if you give Blake Shapen time in the pocket, if you're running the football and you can set up play action and just give him just enough time, you might have a chance to hit some plays down the field. I'm not expecting State offensively to have a big day. You're on the road against a pretty good defense, but I think State could hit some plays on offense, and I think they'll have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, Mississippi State's been – I think they've had a consistent offense. You know, they love to lean heavy on the run game, and maybe that's something you could lean on in this game, but they haven't been – like you had mentioned, they're not super explosive with the pass game. They're not going to hit 80-yard bombs just to hit.
Well, hold on. They are explosive in the pass game. They're not consistent.
They are. Right. That's probably what I was trying to say. Like you'll see every once in a while an 80-yard bomb, or you might see a quick slant over the middle for a 15-yard play or something. They're very interesting with how they mix it up, and I feel like I don't know. Am I crazy to think that they could use that to their advantage on this Florida defense?
I mean, they could. The big thing I'm curious about is to see what adjustments were made offensively coming out of the bye week. And this comment, do you expect Levy to use more tight ends, running backs to help with blocking? I think you need to. I think when you do take those shots down the field, I'm trying to max protect. I don't really care about having a check down option so much as I do, am I getting as much blocking help as I possibly can? I would rather just say, like, Levy typically likes to have a check down on those deep shots because it gives you an option. Okay, well, here's a chance for a positive gain, even if we don't have the shot down the field. I would rather take our chances that Brennan Thompson and Anthony Evans are going to get open one-on-one downfield and make sure Shapen has as much time as possible to get that pass off than not have those bodies in and risk giving up a sack. Like, I don't care if they're not blitzing. I don't care if they're only rushing 4. I would still rather keep those guys in to protect and give yourself as much time possible downfield. But as for some other adjustments, like, I'm very curious to see from a pass game standpoint if they do more trying to get the ball out of Shapen's hands quickly. Like, I feel like there needs to be some adjustments schematically to try and make it to where not all the passing game is just taking the shots down the field. But I do think this is a game where if you protect Shapen, you got a chance to hit those shots. So, look, I don't think State – this to me feels a little bit like it could be sort of like the Arizona State game where I don't see State consistently moving the ball and I don't see State having a huge day from offensively overall. But that can you hit just enough big plays to get it done? I think that is a possibility here. But this is a big game for the offense. Like you're coming off a bye. I get it if you don't have Albert Reese, that's going to be tough, but I think you've got to find a way to prepare for it and understand that Florida has not been super impressive up front defensively this year. Now, they took advantage again of against a bad offensive line in Texas. Like, they were able to get after Arch in that game. That is concerning. But I think you have to – like, you got a bye week. Like, this needs to be a game that you put a good game plan together to give yourself a chance on the road again against a team that is very vulnerable in Florida. Like, I think State offensively can make some plays here. I don't think they're going to be dominant. I think it's going to be a close game either way, but I do think like there is a chance to have a better showing than you did at Texas A&M. You know, with the Texas A&M thing, the pass rush really just ruined your day. And that team was really, things kind of snowballed because of that. I think you have a better chance here against Florida, but we'll see. Like, you're going to have a good game plan in place.